Conservative.
Christian. Mother. Wife.
Air Force veteran.
Gun rights advocate.
This is Stacy on the Right. Here's your host, Stacy Washington.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Stacy on the Right. Stacy Washington is out tonight. I'm your guest host, Kira Davis, coming to you live from Southern California. So happy to be with you tonight, Monday 13th, this historic day as hostages come home to their families after over 2 years. And there's a lot going on with the Middle East and of course what this means, for the future. And I just want to make sure before we welcome our next guest, you guys are praying for the Chicago Bears out there, not to diminish this very serious subject. But I said before break, pray for them and they're still losing. So I don't know. Were you guys even praying? Come on. Let's do this. Okay. So while we let you guys do that, let's welcome in our next guest to talk about something a bit more serious. Please welcome to the show, Abdullah Hayek. He is a Middle East History and Peace Fellow at Young Voices, and he currently serves as an independent Middle East analyst and consultant based in D.C., and his work has appeared in The Hill, The New York Sun, Real Clear World, and he's been on plenty of outlets. He's going to talk to us about the peace deal today. Abdullah, thank you for stopping by. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kira. It's great to be here.
I'm glad to have you today. Perhaps with your expertise, you can shed a little more light on phase one of this peace deal. So as Americans, we're watching, images of hostages come home. We're seeing, Trump out there with the world leaders making these announcements, and, everyone's very excited, but we keep hearing this term, a 20-point peace deal, and this is phase one. If you don't mind, you're the expert. Would you explain to us what phase one is and why just phase one? What else is there to come?
Well, today was a great day for the region. It was long sought, long needed, and Trump has, gathered credit from all around, both enemies and friends alike. But to dive deep into the plan itself, phase one included four things. First of all, a ceasefire, and then the hostage release, and then a humanitarian corridor. Now, that's pretty much done, and what's remaining from that phase is the return of the remains of the deceased hostages 72 hours after the release of the alive hostages. Now, that's pretty much done. Everything's en route. The Palestinian prisoners that were in Israeli prisons have been released. That has been a success. Now, I think the phase after that is going to be the most challenging, which is Hamas disarmament and Israeli military withdrawal from the Gaza Strip itself. Now, that's going to be very tricky and sensitive to navigate through, especially that each side, both the Americans and the Israelis and the Hamas side, each want a different vision in terms of governance and administration and security dynamics in the Strip itself. So how they're going to navigate that, we're going to see in the next few days, especially that the president has stated today in Egypt and in Israel that they're already in negotiations to solve that.
There are a lot of, as you mentioned, Abdullah, there's a lot of credit coming in from all sides for President Trump. And of course, well-deserved, I think. But there are a lot of people out there who are saying that a deal like this really couldn't have ever gotten made without a man like President Trump. In your estimation, why is this happening now? I mean, I'm 51 years old and I've been through now dozens of peace negotiations and American presidents and announced deals and broken deals. I've been through so many as you have. So why is this something that President Trump was able to deliver at this time?
I think there's a lot of factors, Kira, into this. First of all, the team that led the negotiations on behalf of the U.S. side weren't your traditional politicians. You had Steve Witkoff, a billionaire from New York. You had Jared Kushner, who comes from a business background, and Marco Rubio, who's a senator. They're not the average diplomats that the U.S. supervision over Israeli-Palestinian negotiations are used to. So I think that's the first element. You have a transactional mindset in which you give and you take and you get what you give. So that was the first element. I think the second element was Trump's lesson that he learned from 2020, that he needs to hear everyone else on the side of the table. Now, we remember back in 2020, in January 2020, when President Trump announced the peace and prosperity for the Holy Land plan. You know, it was called the deal of the century in the region. It was obviously immediately rebutted by the rest of the region because it was negotiated only with the Israelis to be imposed on the Palestinians. Trump learned that lesson, and he learned that in this region, you need to take everyone's input to come up with a solution that everyone's going to be happy with. And that included the Qataris, the Egyptians, the Turks, and of course, there's other regional players playing roles like Jordan, like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, who will play a pivotal role in the security aftermath, in the reconstruction, in the stabilization efforts, aid distribution, you name it. So I think the teamwork that Donald Trump created in terms of the region also played a role. And I think it's also comes in light of fatigue for both the Israelis and Hamas. I think Israel is just exhausted after almost over 2 years of a war, especially the Israelis traditionally don't engage themselves in wars that last more than a month or two. And for Hamas, it's just realized that it's just run out of options. There's literally nothing else it could do. The Gaza Strip is 97% destroyed. There's no humanitarian aid going in whatsoever. Public opinion towards Hamas on behalf of Gazans themselves is extremely unpopular. There's protests almost every day. So all of these factors together really played into Donald Trump's advantage, and I think he seized the opportunity to bring what we saw today in both Israel and Egypt.
Well, let me ask you this then. You mentioned the word tired. You said fatigue, actually. That, both sides are fatigued. And honestly, I think a lot of us in the rest of the world are fatigued also. We were fatigued with the whole region in the first place because as Americans, it's a situation and a history we don't totally understand, but certainly fatigued with the aftermath of October 7th on both sides of the fence. And you can sense that here, but I'm wondering if fatigue is, I don't know if I would describe Trump as fatigued. He seems energized, but I wonder if fatigue is that's not a great place to be negotiating a 20-point peace deal from. If the other nations around Israel and Gaza are saying, like, we're tired of this too, we're fatigued too, what does that signal for negotiations moving forward? I mean, can you solidify a complicated peace deal like this when everyone's supposedly there because they're just tired?
Well, yes, because if you look throughout the history of the region, Kira, the groundbreaking peace deals, the groundbreaking peace treaties always succeed a very gruesome, bloody conflict. The 1979 Camp David Accords, they succeeded the 1973 Yom Kippur War. That was a bloody war, and the Camp David Accords were the treaty that resulted in the first treaty between an Arab country and Israel. The Oslo Accords of 1993 succeeded the very bloody First Intifada, which resulted in the deaths of thousands of Israelis and Palestinians. So I think fatigue is the factor that we need here. It is most definitely something that is playing a role into an actual successful formula that results in a groundbreaking peace afterwards. So obviously this war that's been on for 2 years, that has not just caused fatigue, it has just caused massive killings, displacement, horrors that we've never seen on both sides. It was just horrible to see what happened over the past 2 years in that war. And I think that now with the iron hot, it's best to hit it right now because it's just only going to motivate people to end the conflict rather than just have this cycle continue over and over. Because according to Israeli intelligence, the statistics can be looked up. 60% of the Hamas fighters that took part in the October 7th attacks, 60% of them were sons of fathers who were killed by Israeli military operations in the past decade. What do you think is going to happen right now when we've seen what happened in Gaza? So if the conflict isn't solved now, if Gaza doesn't get a solution, we are at risk of seeing another cycle of violence emerge in the next decade or so that will make October 7th look like a firecracker. So I think there's a really important motivation right now to end this constant cycle of violence.
I think, yeah, you make a good point about generational, violence and generational grudges. One of the things I've said, we're talking to Abdullah Hayek. He is a Middle East History and Peace Fellow at Young Voices. One of the things that you have talked about is that there is a key role in a sustainable peace for Iran and Jordan. Can you explain what you mean by that? How are these two countries going to play a part moving forward?
Well, I didn't say Iran. I said, Iran is the furthest thing from a peace contributor in the region, trust me. I meant other players like Jordan, like Egypt,
right.
Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Now, obviously, there's a 22-country Arab League. There's 22 Arab countries. The big players happen to be, in terms of U.S. proximity and interests, happen to be the monarchies of the Arabian Gulf, mainly the countries that President Trump visited in May, and, of course, the traditional Arab allies of Egypt and Jordan. Now, in the plan itself, the 20-point plan that you mentioned earlier, it states that the plan envisions an Egyptian and Jordanian role in taking part in training a new Palestinian security force that will make sure that no renewed cycle of violence erupts, and that will oversee the potential Hamas disarmament. Now, the Gulf states will also play a role in that, but their role is bigger in terms of overseeing the establishment of an international fund that will gain donations and everything for the reconstruction of the Strip afterwards. Now, those two combined with U.S. oversight and leadership, I think will get the ballpark homes, because, nobody can do either role alone. And we've seen throughout the conflict, each country, from what I've mentioned, they have their own set of responsibilities in terms of tending to that conflict as a neighboring state, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me wonder about Iran, though. And I only mention Iran because even though I agree with you, of course, it's not a peaceful nation, but it does have a key role in the region as it's a disruptor. It's, there's all kinds of sanctions going on that affect the economics of the region. And I'm wondering if you sense or see any shift in, how the region deals with Iran after this peace deal. Does that change the Iranian situation?
Well, the Iranians really didn't give a care whatsoever to what happened in Gaza. Over the past 2 years, there's been 3 direct military confrontations between Israel and Iran in April and October of 2024 and June of this year. Neither of them were an Iranian attempt to bring rescue and salvage the suffering of the Gazans. It really happened because Iran itself was threatened and struck. So Iran doesn't care about Gaza. Even within its nuclear negotiations, it doesn't even open Gaza. It doesn't even open anything regarding the orbit in which it oversees, whether it was in Iraq or Syria or Lebanon or Gaza, whatever you want. So Iran is struck. Iran has really played out, I would say, 90% of its cards. Its axis of resistance, its asymmetrical network of proxies that it created over the past 2 decades is really crumbling under the weight of its own failure. We've seen the Assad regime crumble in December of 2024. Hezbollah's severely weakened. Hamas, his days are numbered. the Houthis are about to be at the crosshairs of international powers, and Iran really just has only a few cards to play, and it happens to be, ironically, both land, air, and sea. Sea-wise, they have the speedboats and midget submarines that they can utilize in the Arabian Gulf to disrupt oil flows. The aerial threat is the missiles and drones that are really just poor quality so that they can exhaust the stockpiles of American and Israeli high-quality, expensive interceptors. And when I say underground, I'm talking about their nuclear program that, despite the U.S. strike in June on Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, that really did some massive damage, but it did not completely destroy the nuclear program as it is as a whole. It set it back by months, if not over a year, but they can still work on the program again. So they still have a few cards. Iran's influence is just diminishing. It's being seen by the rest of the region that it is a power or an influence that it cannot be relied on because it just easily forsakes those it claims to support. And the region is, sooner or later is going to recognize that peace weighs more on the scale of life than war. And who's bringing peace? It's the U.S. And who's bringing war? It's Iran.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yes. Well, it's an interesting time to be alive and to watch the movements in the Middle East and how they affect us here in America. But as for today, we are happy to see hostages returned and peace return, even if it's just for now, to the Middle East. Abdullah Hayek from Young Voices, please tell people where they can find you online, sir.
Thank you, Kira. It was great talking to you. I can be found on X at ahayek99.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your great work out there. And please enjoy the rest of your evening. Or maybe you're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. So maybe you just need to go to bed. Maybe that's what you need to do right now. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, and take care.
Okay. Take care. Abdullah Hayek. He is the Middle East History and Peace Fellow at Young Voices. And talking to us a little bit about some of the more nuanced details of the peace deal and the situation in the Middle East.